Hello, beautiful souls. I'm your host, Shakira Moore, and welcome to another episode of the Perspective Matters podcast. I have a special treat for you today. I will be having a special guest for this episode, and the special guest is none other than my good friend, Jermaine O'Connor. Now, Jermaine is the published author of two amazing poetry books. First one, Reminders and Revelations, and his second book, The Resolve. So for this episode, we'll be talking a bit about how he's been coping with the new normal and some strategies he has in place for coping. And we'll dive a little deeper into his two books, but my absolute favorite. The one I keep hounding you about to publicize because it's such an excellent body of work. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, excellent. I had to tell myself, no, I have to set a time limit in terms of how long this episode is going to run for. And the number of poems I wanted to pull from in this book, Reminders and Revelations. When I first saw the title, I was like, this is interesting. And as I started to read, I thought the title was so apt.
Yes.
Because there are things in here that do cause me to really reflect. And there are some reminders I really needed, in terms of how I lived, my outlook on life. And in Revelations, there are some things that I needed my eyes to be opened up to see.
Yeah.
So for today, I just wanted us to focus on reminders, because in a time like this, we need reminders, especially ones that have positive messages in them.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go in the order that they were written, but more in terms of the themes themselves. So the first one that I want us to just talk about for a little bit is uncertainty. And that's on page 49. Yeah. For those who don't yet have the book, yeah, you do the honors. It's your work. So I'm going to ask you to read all of them because it's your time to shine. So could you do us the honors?
Of course. No problem. Just a caveat here. Yeah. So I wrote this when I was, definitely thinking about trusting the process. That's really the idea behind this and the internal feeling of that trust. I'm just going to read it here. So uncertainty. Uncertainty was a feeling I could never grasp until I chose to embrace it. So the idea behind that, again, is, we chase after the things to give us certainty. Again, whether it's success and the materials, but sometimes it's not even the materials. It's us thinking that we can have control over things in which we, do not. And the reality is control really comes from fear, right?
Right.
And wanting to control it. And so that's why we grasp, right?
Right.
We're drawing our hands out and grasping and grappling, holding, gripping, and embracing is really, if you think about something you grasp or grip, it's going to be a bit more aggressive, and it implies more, you could almost say it implies a little bit of neediness to it. You hold something tight, right?
Right.
Gripping it. Thing you embrace is something you're going to approach and welcome. In many cases, it's something you're allowing to approach you to embrace it. So the idea that uncertainty is really, it's kind of a relationship.
Right.
Have a relationship with uncertainty in terms of how you choose to treat it or approach it. There's uncertainty in the world. Am I going to grasp at everything, trying to control everything, or do I allow what happens to happen and do what I can do that's within my realm of power, capacity, right?
Right.
And so making the choice to embrace uncertainty for what it is the theme there.
And that's the sentiment behind why I chose this one, is because right now there are so many questions. There are more questions than there are answers.
Yeah.
And uncertainty is a place that brings with it discomfort. And there are a few of us who are comfortable with being uncomfortable, but the majority of us are not.
Yeah.
So in a time like now where your job is uncertain, the economy is uncertain, your own health and life, you are not certain of. How do you cope? How do you adjust? How do you come to terms with that? And like you said, grasp here is you trying to hold on to some measure of control.
Exactly.
If you look at your body's position when you grasp something, your hands are locked around an object, meaning like your hands are closed. But then when you go to embrace someone or something, your arms and your body is open.
Exactly.
So it's like you are physically accepting and welcoming something or someone. So this 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines have so much power and so much honesty and truth and profound wisdom in terms of how we should look at things. Don't try and hold on to things you have no control over, but rather let go, surrender, embrace, open yourself up to what is, and then see how things flow from there. And I feel like once we make the decision to let go, surrender, embrace, the worry falls away and ideas of how you can now adjust will come.
Yeah.
Because you're no longer operating from a place of fear. And I think that's important. And in a time like this, that's the kind of message that we need to hear and be reminded of.
Yeah.
So don't try to hold on to and control, but let go, surrender, and embrace. So awesome, awesome. All right. So the next one I want us to share with our beautiful souls. So this one is introspection on page 75 for good people out there. And again, we'll link the book in my show notes, and I'm encouraging everyone to go grab themselves a copy because it's a good investment. Anytime you're ready.
Yes. So, introspection. Those conversations alone in the dark revealed the most. For I spoke what I couldn't see into existence, and I would see everything I never said. Introspection. Yeah. So the idea here is, for me, the things we say to ourselves and the things we visualize, introspection is a very, powerful thing. So, I spoke what I couldn't see into existence. The idea there is, things I could have never imagined have come to be.
Yeah.
And then seeing everything I never said, that again then is how I've never thought I'd experience, that I may have always wished for, but also, denied myself. The conversations in the dark, when I say revealed the most, it's because we dream, or at least myself, and so, you'll dream of the positive of, things, speaking good things into existence, but sometimes we see things we never would have thought of, and or we see things we always thought we might not have deserved, and so when I say I never said, it also is the idea that I never put those things out there, but sometimes they've come about, and those conversations, you can get dark, right?
Right.
So it's knowing that introspection is powerful. Our life kind of plays out in terms of where we focus and what we say, and what we wish on ourselves, or wish for ourselves, right?
Right.
That was my mindset at that time, trying to write about, in my own way, defining, introspection.
And for me, I chose this one because we now have the freedom and the time to do this.
Yeah.
We no longer have the excuse of work or school or running a business or an empire.
Yeah.
Most of our excuses have now been removed. So now we're forced to face ourselves, we're forced to confront ourselves. And I think in that experience, we'll be able to uncover who we truly are. And then it becomes do we like what we see?
Yeah.
So for me, the conversations alone in the dark reveal the most. Is I didn't take it as literal in terms of you sitting in the dark, but for me, it was more of you finding that quiet space, going within to really finally spend some time with yourself. Ask yourself those those tough questions then and sit with what you're going through. Ask yourself, am I okay? How am I coping? Like really do a check-in.
Yeah.
And it is in sitting and asking yourself those questions that you then get to see who you are and the answers about who you are, how you think, how you're feeling. That's when all of that will be revealed. And most of us hide behind our work, our relationships, our obligations. We hide behind so many of those things because we don't want to face ourselves and know that they're being peeled away bit by bit.
Yeah.
No, we are forced to sit in the dark and then face what is being revealed to us. I thought it was important to bring this one up and just to share this with everyone because it's important that we do some introspection. It's the only way that we can grow. And going through an experience like this,
Yeah.
it serves you better. It serves the community better. It serves humanity better when you grow from this experience and you improve. The second section for me talks about allowing yourself to dream. For I spoke what I couldn't see into existence, and I would see everything I never said. Because sometimes we're so busy executing one dream, we sacrifice the others and we put everything else on the back burner. Know that there is no grind to get to. Now you're free to let your mind roam and wander and explore and revisit passions that you never thought you had time for.
Yeah.
So now I have friends who have taken up painting because no, there is nothing else to do. They have all this free time on their hands. So now they've discovered that they are really good artists and now they're painting, they're spending hours on end painting. I have other people who are writing, journaling. So there is so much that we're uncovering and we're exploring because now we've finally given ourselves the opportunity to do so. That's why I chose this one because it's very relevant. And yeah, it's something that I think is very necessary.
Yeah.
The next one is going to shift the conversation a little bit because it talks about one of my favorite words, boundaries. Yes. And I have an episode that talks all about boundaries. And I think now more than ever, we will be forced to confront the concept of boundaries. So that one is on page 55. Take it away.
So this piece is called Boundaries, and it goes like this. So it will cost me nothing to be kind until it does. So I wrote this when I was less understanding of boundaries
Yeah.
and the importance of them. I was a very widely accepting person. Because of that, kind, or seen as kind, obviously. And so, I went probably most of my life not thinking that boundaries were necessary if I was genuinely kind.
Yeah.
And not even being kind so that people would be kind to me. I just literally didn't know how else to operate. So I was literally like, why else would I be anything else? And thus, I'd expect on top of that no one would have any other reason to be anything else towards me.
Yeah.
So I had an interesting, I guess, expectation, maybe subconsciously, of things. And it really cost me nothing to be kind. Like, it was the easiest thing. My life was pretty simple because I'd just be kind and then keep it moving. And then until it did cost me. And the concept of boundaries becomes, I learned, what it would cost me without boundaries, right?
Right.
So the idea there is, it's the idea of a wake up call. And not to say that I'm less kind now, but I limit, I guess, the extension of kindness. So always still in support of people and being there, but knowing now through experience that I don't have to necessarily accept everything or be as welcoming and inviting. Not that I'm going to be standoffish, but that not everything is not for me. Everything isn't for everybody,
Right.
And so understanding that and knowing that, yeah, I can be kind to everybody and I still am, but okay, like, just being more discerning, more selective, and saying, I'll be kind to all as always, but will I be maybe as inviting or as allowing, or I myself, will I be someone who goes out and seeks additional people or projects or things like that. And also learning that part of kindness, or a necessary element of kindness, is actual boundaries, because boundaries allow people to their expectations of you in check. And that's what I also learned, is that people always expect me to be kind, which I was, but then, you give an inch and they take a mile kind of thing. So
Right.
when they go as eventually they, people may go as far as they think they can go, and then you realize, oh, I was very accepting of things I probably didn't need to accept, and they wouldn't have hated me any less if I said no way back, but here we are. So that's the motivation behind this piece. To this day, it still costs me nothing, but I learned that it won't cost me until it does. And the moment it does might be when the boundary is too late, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's my philosophy there about around boundaries, and my experiences with that.
I chose this one because of the message that I took from it and being able to look at it from two different sides. So for me, in this time, it's important for us to be kind, firstly to ourselves and then to others.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because of the uncertainty and the fear. It is very easy for us to operate from a place of selfishness. So when you look at no supermarket having toilet paper,
Yeah.
because people have gone and bought stacks and packs. To me, that tells me they're operating from a place of fear and uncertainty, and two, they're selfish.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you impact others and you impact the community. But if you operate from a place of kindness, then everybody, including you, stands to benefit
Exactly.
because you're not only thinking about yourself, you're thinking about others. So when you go to buy 6 packs of toilet paper with a household of 2, do you really need 6? Or can you settle with just 2 packs?
Yeah.
So it was important to bring that idea to the forefront, that in a time where everybody wants to think about self, let's not go with wanting to think about self, but just come from a place of kindness and compassion. But I caveat that with, like you said, being discerning. So don't be blindly kind
Yeah.
and don't be blindly compassionate to your own detriment. It's also important to bring that point up, that you're sensible about how you conduct yourself. That's also important. So, yeah, it costs me nothing to be kind. And I will continue to be kind, and I will continue to show compassion and empathy until doing so impacts my own well being.
Yes.
It's not shameful to want to put yourself first.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with looking about your own well being, because if you don't take care of you, then who will?
The idea of boundaries, as well as being the ability to shape how we treat people. To that, even the idea of looking out for yourself enables others to benefit from you more positively, because
Yeah.
the thing with boundaries is you could think about it as if you were to bake a pizza and your pizza had 10 slices, and every time you baked a pizza, people came, you gave all your slices away, and then you realize you have none left for yourself. And then what ends up happening is you get into a habit of people expecting to get 2, 3, 4 slices on their own, and then you get nothing. But they already ate their slices, so they don't even notice that you didn't eat your own slice or get a piece of your own pizza. And so you then decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to bake a pizza. It's going to be 10 slices, but I'm going to eat the first 2 or 3 myself. Then I'll have 7 left, and then I can offer the rest to others.
Yeah.
And setting that kind of a boundary in understanding that feeding yourself first, or being selfish first, right, is important, because then what then happens is then people will only expect to get maybe 2 out of the 7 slices instead of 4 out of the 10, right? And furthermore, to that point, it also creates fairness, right?
Right.
Because again, those, you meet somebody halfway, but they're only meeting you 20% of the way, and then you decide you're going to meet them 80%, you shouldn't have to work that extra 30%. And for them, their 20% gets normalized as them thinking it's halfway. And then when things go sour and then you have to draw back to 50, that person probably doesn't even know how or what the extra 30% even means. They're incapable of it because you might have not set a boundary or enabled them to operate at 20 when you were giving 8, you know? So the idea of boundaries as well as being the ability to shape how we treat people.
Yeah. And how we allow ourselves to be treated too. That's the other thing. Because right now we're talking about social distancing and we take it so literal and we think about only the physical boundaries. You go into the supermarket, there's all these barricades, and it's so easy to think of this word as being physical and literal, but then there are also emotional boundaries that we need to have in place because if we're not careful, then we can suffer as a result. And I say this because not all of us cope and respond to what is going on in the same way. There are some of us who will go quiet and will process internally.
Yeah.
And then there are other persons who they cope by venting.
Yeah.
And then there are others who they feel better by complaining. And you have to know how much of that as an individual you can take and tolerate. So if you have a friend that they constantly watch the news, they're constantly reading the articles, they can tell you the death toll in every city, in every country, and that is their way of coping. But for you, feeding on that negativity does you more harm than good.
Yeah.
And you understand that is how that person copes and that's how that person processes. That's their way of holding on to some measure of control by always being in the know.
Yeah.
You have to be able to recognize that and then for yourself set a boundary that you will only be communicating with this person for no more than 5 minutes. Like that's your threshold. You can't be afraid to admit it, acknowledge it, and then implement it for your own well-being.
Exactly.
You know, you're being kind and compassionate by making yourself available to that person to engage them.
Yeah.
But you have to know your limits.
Yeah.
You're offering a service and you're being a good friend by allowing them to talk and to rant and to rage for the 5 minutes. But at the end of the day, you also need to be kind to yourself. And when being kind to you starts to cost me my peace of mind and my well-being, then that's where the boundaries have to be put in place. Like, listen, I love you, you're my friend, but I have to go, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why I chose this poem as well, because it's something that we're now being forced to face, especially for those of us who live in a household with more than one person. So you're constantly in each other's face and in each other's space. How do you maintain that emotional and that mental boundary?
Yeah.
You know, how do you hold on to your personhood when you have to share a space? And it is being able to find what works for you. That is what will keep you sane, keep you whole, keep you healthy, and allow you to come out on the other side of this experience. And it was important that we talked about this and get people starting to think about it as well. Pay attention to the kind of boundaries that you set for yourself, the emotional boundaries, boundaries within your friendships. How do people treat you and how do you treat people? Very important things that we need to be talking about in this time. So yeah, that's why I chose this one.
No, it's a great piece. I appreciate you sharing that. It's boundaries regulate reciprocation, right? So
Yes, 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 yes. Say that again for the people in the back.
boundaries regulate reciprocation.
That was so good.
I actually just wrote that down, and then I was like, let me just say it because it just popped up in my head.
It was a good one. That's why you're the writer, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. It just came to me. Yeah, that's essentially it. It regulates reciprocation. So I give to you, you give to me, share, exchange, but boundaries, the speed of that, the capacity of that, the frequency of that, the intensity of that, privacy, or different things like that. That's what boundaries are for, is to then regulate how you in fact are giving and taking, right?
Right. And last but by no means least, and yes, that's a very cliche saying, but it's very, very relevant for right now, is the poem Cherish. And that's on page 37. So before I get you to read and share the headspace and the heart space of where this is coming from, I wanted to share why I chose this poem and why I saved it for last. These last few days or weeks for some of us have forced us to face our mortality.
Yeah.
And that's not always an easy and a comfortable thing to do.
Yes.
When you're living, you don't have time to think about dying. Now that the business of living has slowed down to a snail's pace, now you have been given or being forced to engage in the practice of thinking about dying. And then when you think about dying, then you think about your loved ones, and then you start to assess what you place your value on, what is near and dear to you, what is important to you, and ultimately what you cherish. For me, it's relationships, it's friendships, it's the connections that I have with people. Those are what tops my list.
Yeah.
If I was to prioritize what I cherish and what I deem important, it's not the academic achievements.
Yeah.
It's not the work achievements.
Yeah.
It's not even the things I create. It's people.
Yeah.
It's a connection. So in a time where the things that we build are slowly losing value, what do we then place our value on? What are the things we're going to ultimately cherish or now being forced to consider to cherish, to hold and deem as important? That's what we're now being confronted with as people, as a humanity. And that's why I say this one for last, because I want us at the end of the day to walk away asking ourselves, what do we cherish?
Yeah.
So with that said, it's all yours.
Great. So this one goes: cherish your never happenings as much as your never endings, in moments, in loves, in life. So the idea behind this is, for me, when I wrote this, I was reflecting on a lot of things where, I might have thought whether or not I might have been attached to whatever the person or the moment or the object or the opportunities, but just sometimes thinking, wow, imagine if that lasted longer. Imagine if this person was still around today, or if I was still doing this, and learning to attribute the same value we give to things that we believe will never end to things that may have never lasted or happened,
Yeah.
So it really comes to seeing things for what they are and holding on to, and I know we talked about control and all of that, but the idea of holding on to what the goodness of those never happenings might have been. So, yeah, this didn't pan out, but it taught me this, or there was that one moment I'll never forget. And because of that, because of cherishing that, you can cherish it as much as the things that you may see that won't end or that may last forever, because that's how you make those things last forever, right?
Right.
Is by cherishing them. The almosts in our lives and things like that, it's about cherishing those sort of things and seeing them as equally as the things we do have, because there may be a time where the things we do have may not last, and then we are forced to assess, and again, like you said, how we place the value, right?
Right.
And how we value things. So looking at, just because something is in the present with us, something we might think we'll have forever, it's a gratitude piece.
Yeah, I love also the fact that the first thing in the list of what you should cherish, you said in moments. Because earlier you mentioned we're always basing our happiness on a future achievement. I'll be happy when I get that new car. I'll be happy when I get this promotion. I'll be happy when. And it's like happiness is a moving target.
Exactly.
And if you live like that, you'll never be happy. You'll never be satisfied. You'll never have enough.
Yes.
And for me, when you mentioned cherishing never endings in moments, in love, in life, the in moment for me spoke volumes, because it's so easy for us to fall in the trap of future versus now. We won't enjoy our full existence if we don't appreciate and cherish the no and assign to the no equal, if not greater, value than the future. And in a time where tomorrow isn't sure, isn't certain, we really should be cherishing the no.
Yeah.
When people are talking about, oh, out of this will come a recession, and you start to worry, you're worrying about a reality that may not come to be. You're worrying about a recession that may not happen. You're worried about a circumstance that may not even come to pass. When you put yourself in a tailspin with ideas, realities that just live in your head rather than focus on right now, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
And I think that's the final message for this section that we need to leave our listeners with, that in a moment where it is easy to give in to the fear, to give over to the uncertainty,
Yeah.
to worry about future events, don't surrender to that. Instead, cherish the no. Cherish your relationships, exercise compassion and kindness, but with a spirit of discernment. Don't be afraid to put your boundaries in place. Don't be afraid to enforce them.
Yeah.
Like, those are the key lessons and the takeaways that I have. And I just wanted to share with anybody who hears this. Thank you so much for writing this excellent piece of work. And that's the power of the written word. When it's intentional and it's beautifully done, it's timeless. And it's not confined to any one circumstance, situation. I just had to share it with my listeners so they all find hope and peace and solace from the wisdom in your words.
Thank you. Thank you for reading and finding yourself in it. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when I write these things, in my craft, it's always for myself first. It's really my way of often translating the intangibles of life. And so being able to really give that away is the blessing, and it's something that can't be bought in that sense. And so I'm always, grateful that people can walk away with something like that and impart some sort of change in that regard. And even whether if it's not change, but if it's just somebody's able to think a little bit more about themselves or about the things they care about, and if it ultimately makes them put more into those things, then the book has served. So thank you. I appreciate it very much.
My beautiful, beautiful souls, thank you so much for listening. This is the longest episode of the entire podcast, and I really appreciate you sitting down and going on this journey with me and Jermaine as we discuss ideas and thoughts that we can all ruminate on as we continue to go through our social distancing and confinement in a bid to flatten the curve. I really appreciate Jermaine taking the time to have this conversation with me. I felt it was needed, and I wanted to spark some ideas, some thought, as well as encourage and leave with you a message of hope that regardless of what we hear on the news and what we see happening around us, we need to keep hope alive. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. I'm sending love and light and positivity to you. And as you hear my voice, you will feel better and you'll find solace in the message that we've shared with you, and you'll find peace. So until next time, remember, there are two sides to every coin. Just flip it to get the full view. Catch you next week. Bye.